I used to be a radiographer. I know about radiation, I know about energy. I used to work for the NHS in the UK, and then I worked for a medical industry for 18 years. Not big pharma, I worked for a medical equipment company. I've known about medical corruption since the early 90s. I know that it's been rife, and I know that CDC and the FDA are massively corrupt. It's been going on for a long time. The government's corrupt. But what's more relevant for me at the moment is that I retrained doing energy medicine. I'm an energy medicine practitioner, and as part of my job, with the equipment that I use, I can test whether people's bodies are suffering from radiation stress. And from around about February, March time, when there was the peak of the so-called pandemic, every single person, including myself, my own family, my own children, every single person I was testing was off the scale for radiation stress. I've never seen anything like it. It was as if we'd all been in some kind of Chernobyl disaster. And all the symptoms of COVID, where people were getting ill and dying during the sort of peak of the pandemic, were related to radiation issues. That's why people were saying it's not viral pneumonia. The guy in the hospital in New York was saying that it was more like altitude sickness, because people had hypoxemia, where their saturation levels were down in the 40s and 50s, whereas it's usually unusual for it to even be down to about 92, and then it's normally a problem. But the blood was just not, had no oxygen in it, and that's because the radiation damages the red blood cells, so the red blood cells cannot absorb oxygen, and that's why the ventilators were not working when they were trying to ventilate people in northern Italy and in other parts like in New York. None of this is to do with a virus. It's not a virus, it's to do with a radiation attack. And the radiation attacks the lungs. It also attacks other parts of the body, but the lungs are delicate tissue, so they get affected quickly. It can have long-term effects, because then you can get scarring on the lungs, so possibly 2, maybe 6 months later people can still have breathlessness issues because of the initial radiation attack. There's also issues to do with, it affects the bacterial flora in the body, because the radiation sort of imbalances the body, so people end up suffering with IBS-type symptoms and parasites and cystitis. Loads of people with kidney infections and cystitis, that's linked to radiation, and skin problems and hair loss and tinnitus and loss of taste, loss of smell. They're all the effects of radiation. And if people start reading up on radiation sickness or radiation pneumonitis, radiation exposure, then they'll realise that all this stuff to do with COVID, it's all the same thing. And the COVID thing, virus, it's just a smoke screen. You need to ignore the fact that people are going about a virus. It's not contagious, even though WHO have said that it's not contagious. The masks is just irrelevant. The masks are only there to keep people in a state of submission and a state of fear. They know full well it's not contagious. It's far, if it was contagious and it was the peak that was going on in April, and it wasn't peak, it would have carried on going up. It wouldn't have just dropped down suddenly like it did. And then the summer, it was completely flat. And the only reason it's starting to go up now, again, is because it normally goes up at this time of year with people who generally get ill with pneumonia and flu and everything else. But all the stuff is just flu symptoms, but now they're being categorised as COVID.
Rebranded.
Yeah. Well, what happened in the UK was the Office of National Statistics for October, the total number of deaths in October for respiratory illness was 981. For respiratory illness. Now that would normally include all deaths due to flu, asthma attacks, COPD, any other kind of respiratory type illnesses. But for this year, for October, 978 out of 981 have been categorised as COVID. And only 3 have been categorised as anything other than COVID.
So just 3 guys got flu and pneumonia
or maybe it's COPD or a massive asthma attack. Yeah. So 3 people out of all that died of anything other than
out
COVID.
of 67,886,000.
That was the UK statistics for October for respiratory deaths. Right? And so if people don't think that the figures are being manipulated and it's just scaremongering to keep people in a state of fear. Yeah, and there's fear. People need to overcome the fear and get rid of this sort of state of hypnosis that people are under, which is all part of the government and the mainstream media that are doing it. And it's all because it's an election year as well, and they're trying to bring down Trump, because he's the one that's trying to stop them.
Where can we find more information about what you're doing? Have you got a channel, or because people are interested with what you're saying?
Maybe they are, but I've had to keep fairly low profile with what I do, because otherwise people like me get attacked, and like homeopaths get attacked, like herbalists get attacked. Anybody that does anything that is in conflict with the main narrative of the mainstream media, of the main medical establishment, that, you know, they're outsiders. And I used to, myself and a friend here, we both had breast cancer. And I recovered from breast cancer without having chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And that was through using natural medicine. And I was told that I was terminally ill 2.5 years, nearly 3 years ago. Thankfully I'm doing okay at the moment, but it's just still worrying me. I'm still at risk. But if I do die within the next 2, 3, 10 years or whatever due to cancer, I don't want to spend the last few years of my life locked in a house or wearing a mask. I want to live my life, not sort of live it under a tyrannical state. And how many other people who are maybe terminally ill, or whether it's elderly folk in nursing homes, trapped in their homes, so they want to spend the last few years of their life not being able to see the
So people like yourself with serious condition that require treatment, you cannot get to hospital. Like I got 4-year-old baby, and I had a call from NHS to have him vaccinated. So what about that?
Oh, the vaccines. There's dubious proof with vaccines, and the doctors are taught.
But what I'm just pointing is the focus. So like 4-year-old baby can perfectly cope with getting the infection, while you need medical help as now, and you can't get it, but they are taking time to call for somebody who doesn't need it.
But also what you've got to remember is your diet. Your diet is very important. They are feeding us absolute rubbish. You need to be on a good diet, and that includes fresh fruit, organic, but it's impossible for a lot of people. But you must thoroughly wash all your fruit and vegetables, and you should have lots of vegetables.
Filtered water.
Yeah, but
you should be taking iodine if you can get hold of hydroxychloroquine. There was a study done on hydroxychloroquine because there is a patent application on hydroxychloroquine that actually shows that it will negate the side effects of radiation. And if you look this up, there's a patent for it. And there was also a study done on hydroxychloroquine on rats. It was only a small study, but they had 10 rats, and 5 of them exposed to radiation. It was only a small study, but they had 10 rats, and 5 of them exposed to radiation. 5 of them, all 10 they exposed to radiation, and then 5 of them they gave injections of hydroxychloroquine, and 5 of them they didn't. And the ones that had the injections of hydroxychloroquine, they all survived. The ones who did not have the injection of hydroxychloroquine, they all died. Right? And that's why Trump was telling people, I think as a code, to try to sort of warn people that hydroxychloroquine works against so-called COVID, but it's really because it works against the side effects of radiation. And it's used for treatment of people who've got side effects due to radiotherapy and chemotherapy. It can be used as well.
But if they cannot get hold of that, they need to be looking at an iodine supplement, and a good one. Don't just go to these small.
You need to reduce your exposure to Wi-Fi radiation as much as possible. Get out in nature as much as possible.
And clean your diet.
Get good sleep. You need to get fun and laughter in your life, which at the moment I think all this is about trying to stop anything that's anything to do with fun. Not allowed to sing. Not allowed. I do. I used to be a radiographer. I know about radiation. I know about energy. I used to work for the NHS.